Welcome to Film Forum Presents, a podcast featuring special live events recorded at our theater located at 209 West Houston Street in downtown Manhattan. In this episode, Film Forum presents the opening night Q&A for CARMINE Street Guitars, featuring filmmaker Ron Mann and subjects Rick Kelly and Cindy Hulej, on Wednesday, April 24th, 2019. They were joined by filmmaker and SQÜRL guitarist Jim Jarmusch, a longtime devotee of the store who originally introduced Ron to Rick and Cindy. The Q&A was moderated by Joshua Rothkopf, senior film critic for Time Out New York. CARMINE Street Guitars is now playing through Tuesday, May 7th.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Film Forum. Thanks for coming out tonight. My name is Mike Maggiore. I program the premieres with Film Forum director Karen Cooper. And you're really in for a treat tonight. CARMINE Street Guitars is another gem of a documentary from Ron Mann, who is no stranger to Film Forum. We opened his earlier film, Comic Book Confidential, in 1989 at the Film Forum Twin Cinema on Watts Street. And we opened his pressing and hilarious marijuana documentary, Grass, in 2000. CARMINE Street Guitars is a lovely portrait of one of Film Forum's neighbors, a gem-like shop, and its proprietor, Rick Kelly, as well as his apprentice, Cindy Hulej. CARMINE is a street that once hosted at least 6 or 7 guitar shops, and Rick's shop is the last one standing. He has been called the Geppetto of rock and roll this week by Variety. And he and Cindy, of course, craft incredibly beautiful guitars, but this film is about much more than just their work. It's about analog culture. It's about a community of artists, creative inspiration, and in a way, it has a beautiful meditative quality that I found unexpected. It also features, and there's no spoilers here, but a succession of very cool guitarists strolling through the shop and treating us to some beautiful music. One of CARMINE Street Guitars' frequent clients is Jim Jarmusch. In addition to being a brilliant filmmaker, he also happens to have a band with Carter Logan called SQÜRL, a self-described enthusiastically marginal rock band who like big drums and distorted guitars. And you've probably heard their music if you've seen Jarmusch's film, Only Lovers Left Alive. We're thrilled that Ron, Rick, Cindy, and Jim will join us after the screening for Q&A to be moderated by Joshua Rothkopf, the chief film critic for Time Out New York. So don't go anywhere after the screening. And now, welcome to CARMINE Street Guitars.
Thank you, Film Forum, for booking this film. I'm Josh Rothkopf. I'm with Time Out New York. We have our very special guests here. Let's first give some warm applause for Rick Kelly, the proprietor of CARMINE Street Guitars. Yes. And his number two, his I don't want to say apprentice. I guess not anymore. Oh,
she's a pro now. 7 years now.
A pro. There's no apprentice about Cindy Hulej is here. One of the many subjects of the film, Jim Jarmusch, is here.
Yeah.
And the filmmaker, Ron Mann. So, Ron, let's a question for you first. Something about this film that I love is that it's a documentary that's very quiet. It's kind of about a vibe, right? It doesn't have
There's
a lot.
a movie
going
called It Might Get Loud. This is It Might Get Quiet.
This is it might get it definitely gets quiet. And I just am wondering from the point of view of a filmmaker, what is it about that kind of subject that attracted you? Most documentarians are like, I'm going to make something about a guy walking on the Twin Towers, or this is the opposite tack. So what is it as a filmmaker that attracted you to this shop?
I walked in, and it felt like going back in time. We actually all walked from CARMINE Street here. It's right around the corner. It was also about, as I get older, I see things disappear, and people and places and values. I felt like that it was important to capture that in this changing neighborhood. I mean, Rick also has a very Zen-like quality, and I was just by hanging out in the store, I hung out there for a bit before making the movie, and just to try to replicate that experience of just being there, because it's a special place. Everything that I do is personal. I'm being evicted from a building that I've been living in for 35 years. I have no plan about where I'm going, and it's about the rent. The film, for me, was about Rick and what he does, and the visionary that he is, but it was also personal because the rents are so high that a lot of these artisans are being thrown out of their neighborhood. I think something's being lost there, and to me that was like where it really resonated for me personally.
The film has that as its subtext, a text really for me, this idea of a community and a history that you can actually feel in the instruments, because they're literally made out of the story, the pieces of New York, old wood, old pieces of New York. Maybe a question for you, Rick. We love the vibe of the shop, but what was it in your head that said, yeah, I'll let a filmmaking team come in here and do their shooting and film us at work and set up their lights and everything? How were you able to figure that out?
Well, I had seen some of Jim's movies and some of Ron's movies already, and I kind of knew the vibe and the way they would personalize it, and it would be more about the neighborhood and then more about me, and it kind of was that way. It's really a story of what's going on in the city, and a story about the shop and the way we do things. It is like going back in time, walking in the shop. It's an 1827 building, and all the wood I use comes from these old buildings. And, you think that there's magic in the wood when you're making guitars out of this wood, and I think that really does come across in the movie.
I love this scene where you're talking about the McSorley's wood and how so much beer has spilled on it. And Jim, let me ask you about I know, it's like, hello, Jim Jarmusch. You have a guitar that Rick made for you, correct?
Yes.
Where did the wood come from?
The wood came from the roof beams of the building on the Bowery where I lived some of the time. And actually my neighbor below us, John Campos, a jazz guitarist, and years ago he told me about Rick's shop. So I was already a Carmine Street fan. And then it was his idea to make sure Rick got a hold of all this wood, like very old hard white pine, like 150-year-old wood. So we made sure Rick got that wood. But so my guitar is made out of that wood.
It's amazing. Do you feel you play better on Rick's guitars?
No. But they sound better. They sound so beautiful. It's just something he does. There's a magical thing in it. They're made by hand. They are incredible instruments and for years a lot of his clients or people that have instruments with Rick, we were arguing with him about his prices being too low. Which is very odd.
Not
right?
the typical argument.
I'm like, come on, Rick, man, what people
I'm
pay
still
for.
arguing.
Yeah.
$10.
Tell them how much it is.
It was always, I want them to be played. I want them out there. I want them to be played. They're not for collecting. They're not for investing. They're instruments to go in the world so music comes out of them.
Tools to make music.
Yeah, they're tools. So.
I think that's a really beautiful idea, and that also is kind of the idea of like what the old village was like. The idea that there were different places, different shops, restaurants, places for you to live in. They weren't necessarily these corporate places, and there was something that was very singular about them.
Well, that's the other thing, not to interrupt, and then I'll shut up, but it's a kind of vortex, Carmine Street Guitars. For me, it's always been that way. So my friends go there, Mark Rebo, Esther Ballin, Jesse Mallon, lots of people I know. There was a period maybe 10 years ago where I'm sort of a friend of Patti Smith. I'm a big admirer, and I didn't know she was between addresses, so I could leave a note or letter at Rick's place, and then go there like 2 weeks later, and I'd get a response that Patti left back for me. You know? It's just like that there.
Yeah.
And and you see the great people that in there, Lenny Kaye, and all these incredible people.
What was your quote on that, Ron?
It's like an old post office at the turn of the century.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, we had Patty's guitar today, and she was asking about you.
Should have left a note.
I also, Cindy, I love the career that you're kind of crafting out for yourself. Did you say you were there for 7 years already at this point?
Yes, I'm already there for
And
7.
I mean, this is an amazing place to have kind of like found yourself and found your art.
I've found myself, but I feel like it's found me just as much. Like, there's been a few times throughout the years when I was growing up throughout high school in New Jersey where I already knew about Rick's shop, and there had been a couple times where I passed it, a couple times where I'd seen it on TV and stuff like that, where he was either closed. So I was like, oh, look, there's Kelly over there. Like, that's a custom guitar shop. But I never put 2 and 2 together with, like, what I was following later on with the Bowery Pine guitars online and stuff, because, you know, when I really started following him, it was in high school, 3 or 4, well, basically like my whole high school. But I had really kind of, I don't know, yeah, what?
No, makes sense.
I'm getting lost again.
And I know that
I talk too much.
you do the Instagram account too for the shop, don't you?
I do, yeah. Well, okay, so when I started there, I really I wasn't even on social media. I wouldn't have been on social media if it wasn't for the shop. My whole thing was I kind of got off of it. I was sick of it at that point, and I wanted people to really see what Rick was doing. And Rick doesn't even have a cell phone now. Like, that's not like, he really doesn't have a cell phone or anything at home like that. So I started the Instagram account, and it kind of ended up like we were doing a shop renovation, because when I walked in there the first time, the showcases were like black with sawdust from like 30 years of him just putting like his parts in there and not caring if anybody bought anything because he was building in the back. So I was going, you gotta like, we have to like sell something and like make you some money. Like if you're gonna be doing like $30 or $40 setups, I mean, this is ridiculous. Like Guitar Center's like $150 or something recently, I heard, for like a regular setup. So anyway, so that ended up being like, oh, like we can renovate the back shop where he had like his 2 old showcases back there and like a wood wall. Just like beams and beams and beams and beams, where I was like, why don't you put those on like shelves, label them? Kind of like the whole organized confusion with his bench, where he like, the bench is still the way it is. But like the rest of the shop, it was like, okay, like let's get this out of here, maybe like put another pin router or something in. And his idea was really to put a Cindy bench over there, because I was starting to build more and more. I mean, that was my goal. It wasn't really the custom work. That, you know, I always had the art thing, but when I came to him, I told him my story, he related, and I was like, I want to build guitars. But of course I always had fun with the artwork, because that's what I always did too, you know. I grew up with music and art. So that ended up being a Cindy bench. And he kept me going with the custom work, and I didn't think anybody was going to want it, but, you know, I've had orders ever since, so it's really developed into something different.
I mean, it's,
yeah,
and there's a huge following for it, too. Do you think the film is going to impact on sales?
Oh, I don't know about sales, but it's great meeting all the people that have been coming in from all over the world, actually. We had people from Austria, people from Iceland that came in, you know, last week. Today we had people from Amsterdam. And now with the film here, we have got a lot of people just wanting to walk over and see the plays.
Yeah.
And everybody's always
Yeah,
welcome.
this
Doors
morning.
always open.
I want to turn it over to our crowd for some questions, but before I do, I do
Yeah.
have one more for Ron. Actually, it's a bit of a serious question. There's this specter of gentrification. Yes, I worry about the gentrification that's happening, and you see that guy, that shark outside, kind of looking around. You sort of you avoid him, you know. But I wonder how long something like this can last. I wonder if gentrification is something that can really be combated by communities coming together and making films like this.
Well, it's not gentrification, first of all. Gentrification is about, you can be nostalgic about Walt Whitman in the 20s, or you could be, nostalgic about Kerouac and Ginsberg and the folk movement, or the Velvets and Hendrix here, and it just changes all the time. So change is it's for me, it's the barbarian invasion of urban yuppification. That to me is what the problem is.
So it's the kind of change. I remember
Yeah.
we did an interview once, and you told me that New York is always changing. That's the one constant.
Yeah, if you choose New York as your city and you want it to stay the same,
Go
then you got
somewhere
the
else.
way wrong city. Because you have to look at its history, and where Wall Street is, the tip of Manhattan was a Native American trading post, right?
Yeah.
And if you look at the West Village, the streets make no sense because they were configured around a kind of encampment, basically shanty town, right? So New York's constantly being changed by hustlers, and that's what New York is. There are no natural resources here. It's about hustle. It's a hustler's place. So if you don't like the hustling thing, man, you get the wrong spot. You know?
Let's hear from some of these hustlers here. We're all hustlers here, and raise your hands high, and I'll repeat the question for everyone.
Yeah, you talked a lot about the rent and the gentrification and all that. Is a lot of the reason why you're still there because Lily isn't interested in just the most money possible? That you've got a landlord who really believes in the neighborhood?
Absolutely, yeah. Lily DeAngelis, my landlady. Yeah. Yeah, her family's been there for 5 generations, and she hopes to pass the building on to her daughter. And so I've just picked the right building. When I came to the village, I had one of 3 places I was going to be. And actually, I had another shop around the corner on Downing Street, which is now owned by,
Which was called?
Yeah, Naked City Guitars. Yeah, that was in the late 70s. But now that building is gone all co-op, and I would have been gone. So I really got lucky with Lily, absolutely, yeah, and her family.
The film played at the New York Film Festival, and Lily was there, and she came up running right after the screening and said, "Rick, you're not going anywhere."
Some more questions. Yeah, right here in front.
I loved it. It was a great film. You seem to have such a love for musicians and rock and rollers. What did you think when you would see very iconic musicians break their guitars?
Oh, you mean like the Peter Townsend where they smashed them kind of thing? Well, I think most of the time that happened is usually they would pick a guitar that was more of a factory-made guitar. That even in Jim's movie, that you had that German guitar. Yeah. I thought it was the original thing, and you said you had one made so that it could be broken and it wouldn't be that way. But yeah, that would be heartbreaking if someone was to break a 1938 00 or something.
Yeah, we went to the screening for that.
Yeah.
We were like, we have to ask Jim that.
No vintage guitars were injured or killed.
Like in our movie, no hippies were injured.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see.
So it looked like you obviously fall in love with many of your guitars, and then McSorley's guitar in particular.
Right.
Looking like you were going to buy it. You really had this look on your face, don't do it. Is that true?
It is hard to see them go. They're all like my children, little babies. But then you go, all right, I can always make another one. And whether it'll be just as good, I don't know. But it's gotten me through letting them loose. So, but it's neat. I love it when they come home to nest. That's the best part, when they come back, for a visit, or if I get to get. Yeah.
Rick, do you think that you remember all the guitars you've made?
Oh yeah. Well, no, I shouldn't say that. I mean, I remember them when I see them again. Then I remember the whole story behind the building process. But you do forget about them. There's been so many now. But when they come back, it's like, oh, I remember that one. Jeez. I started numbering the Bowery ones, and for the first 100, I numbered each one, and that was probably 4 or 5 years ago that stopped, and I've tripled.
More.
Yeah, I don't
Way
know.
more
Yeah,
than
way more.
that.
But
Sorry.
before that, I did number I got to about 800, and then stopped that too. That was way back in the early 80s, so I really don't know.
He's been building for 51 years now, just so you guys know.
We got to thank all the people. It's a collective effort to make a movie, and some of those people are here, and it's like being in a band, and I want to thank them personally for actually making this film possible, because it's not just me. They make me look good. So,
If you haven't already, do yourself a favor and check out Carmine Street Guitars. Go visit the shop and tell your friends about this film. Let's thank our guests. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Film Forum Presents. Special thanks to Abramorama for making this event possible. If you like what you just heard, please be sure to subscribe to get future episodes and rate and review so that more movie lovers can find us. Film Forum is an independent nonprofit cinema, and our doors have been kept open for nearly 50 years thanks to the invaluable support of our members and donors. Please visit www.filmforum.org for details on membership, as well as information and showtimes for our current programming. See you at the movies.